For the last 2 months or so, I started to have this Dharma talk, where we're doing it from the perspective of a practicing Buddhist, basically using the Buddha's teaching and how it applies to our daily life, in particular in a period of turmoil and chaos as we are in now. And I talk about how there's the 37 factors of enlightenment that summarizes all the teaching of Buddha as it applies to the technology, the techniques, and not just the theory. And the 37 factors of enlightenment is actually made up of 7 overlapping pieces. So not all the 37s are unique. It just, when you take these 7 pieces, which overlaps anyway, and you take them individually, then there's 37. And one of the important pieces is called the 5 faculties, starting with faith, diligence, mindfulness, and then something called samadhi, which is one-point concentration. That's what the yogis practice. That's what the Buddhists practice. And then ultimately achieving what is called panya, and that's the wisdom. Okay? And I said that since the election, it's important that we self-select and we kind of treat this as our sanctuary and try to understand what it takes to survive the next 2 years, hopefully only the 2 years. I suspect that after 2 years, the opposing party will take control of the Congress like they always do, and then we'll figure out what to do after that. But in any case, it's important to understand wisdom means the way of protecting ourselves, bring out the warrior quality in us. That's why I use Shambhala warriors, which has the dual weapons of wisdom and compassion. Now, we talk a great deal about wisdom because that's the end goal of the 5 faculties. I also talk about the 5 faculties, the first 3 being the foundation. The foundations are faith, which could also mean confidence. In this case, mindfulness just means anchoring your mind on your body, anchor your mind on your breath. And then in between, the bridge is called diligence, one breath at a time. And forming that foundation is obviously built for a spiritual practice that gives us the wisdom. And the importance of that is very clear. It's been many, many years. If you look back on how long this has been going on, we finally come to a point in time where slightly more than half of our fellow countrymen decided that they need a new leadership, and this new leadership not only consists of our executive branch, but also our judicial branch, but also our legislative branch, all 3 branches, plus the media. And so the only way that we could fight back, to have a chance of fighting back, is not let them control our emotion. If you let them control emotions and you fight anger with anger, fear with fear, then there's no way that we could recover from this. Or even if you recover, we just become one of them. There's no point to it then. So wisdom is about protecting yourself. Wisdom is about not following the negative energy. But where does the compassion come from? How do we practice compassion? We do practice compassion here, just that it's not so obvious. It's not so obvious because the compassion starts with loving kindness for oneself. And once again, that triangle is also there to practice compassion, because first you have to have faith. You have to have confidence that you're spending an hour and a half together with me every Saturday that is worthwhile, that is actually helping you physically, mentally, and spiritually. So it starts with faith. And then it starts with mindfulness, that this is a sanctuary. This is a time where you can actually focus inward, focus on your body and your mind. And then it requires that third piece, which is like the cement in the concrete that has all 3 components. You need the cement that kind of glue it all together, and that's the diligence. the diligence, the determination to do this one step at a time. So it turns out that everything that we do here is not just for our spiritual health, it is also for physical health. So this sets the stage for what I really want to talk about today, which is how do we overcome the problem that we have, the physical problem that we have, which really has to do with inflammation. All the diseases that are treated separately, things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, dementia, stroke and heart attack, and all the problem with the immune system, autoimmune system, with the they are all tied to inflammation. So let me take back a step, and we always try to forget the worst part of our experience, and one of the worst part of our experience is COVID, which we started in the early part of 2020, and it lasted 3.5 years or so. And when you look back, it was a very tragic event because 1.1 million of our fellow citizens have died from this disease. Almost all of them are elderly. Almost all of them have some kind of underlying disease that are being treated by Western medicine. Almost all of them have high blood pressure. Since almost all of them are elderly, which means that they were covered by Medicare, which means that they were sufficiently medicated so that the symptom was under control, but yet they had no immunity. Today, more than half of our adult populations suffer from high blood pressure, what we call hypertension. Over 95% of those who suffer from hypertension are called essential hypertension, which means that the doctor actually don't know the cause of the high blood pressure. But they treat it anyway by giving the patient medicine to relieve them of the symptom. But high blood pressure is not the disease. It's just a symptom. You cannot treat it as a disease. It's as if you're eliminating the only witness to the crime. Now, it turns out that high cholesterol is also not a disease. I talk about this many times. High cholesterol is your body's way of healing itself by putting out cholesterol to repair the damage in your blood vessel. Once again, due to inflammation. These days, there's enough evidence to say that we don't take high blood pressure medicine because there are some side effects such as dementia. Because it doesn't deliver cholesterol into your brain. Turns out that diabetes is the same thing too. My father suffered from diabetes. I watched him going from type 2 to type 1. Type 2 means that his glands are fine. He has enough chemical in his body, enough it's just that he has a bad diet, bad eating pattern, so it generates too much hormone in his body, and it overwhelms his body. But yet he's treated like as if he's a type 1. Medicine after medicine, eventually his gland give up and he has to take insulin. Same thing. So I think we're not going to change everyone. I can't even change my family about their viewpoints. Definitely not the Western doctor. But there's enough evidence here to say that this is really an indictment on our healthcare system. That our healthcare system, this industrial complex, is not there for your health. It's not a health care. It's sickness care. Right? Their job is to use chemical to reduce your symptom as opposed to healing you. On the other hand, economics speaks. There are more and more of us entering into retirement age. So our medical care system, our sickness care system is overwhelmed by the baby boomers. Now, by definition, the baby boomers start after World War II, end of World War II, which is, I was born about 9 years after that. I was born in 1956, so I'm actually right in the middle of the baby boomers. And I have many siblings, and I have siblings and many cousins and friends who are many years younger than me, about 5 to 7 years younger than me. They're at the beginning of the baby boomers. I see them as sick people, that they might have another 20 years to live. That's the lifespan, but their health span is already done. Their health span is already done. They're not healthy. That's because their body is inflaming from the lifestyle, from the food, from their environment, from the mental state, and from the way they're being treated. So there is a more and more understanding of how these lifestyle diseases are tied to our what's called the chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is tied to chronic stress. And so more and more people are studying that because it's an economic issue now, that we're draining our resources. And there's a term that is being used, and I mentioned that before. It's called aging. That as you age, the difference between the one that are healthy versus the one that are really not healthy, but then they're just that their sickness is under control, has to do with inflammation. And that term is called aging. I like that. So let's talk about why chronic inflammation and chronic stress are tied together. Let's look at us human beings as a species. And people say that we were once a monkey. I wouldn't say that humans are monkeys. I just say that once upon a time we share the same ancestor. I think that is true. And it's about 4 million years ago that we start to diverge. Human beings become humans and monkeys remain monkeys. And I mentioned that that has to do with our use of the thumb. When we recognize that we know how to use the thumb, we then know how to hold on to something, then we can break a branch off the tree and use it as a defense weapon. That all started about 4 million years ago. That's when we start to walk down the tree. We still walk on all four, but at least we got down from the tree because we know how to defend ourselves with the stick, because we know how to use the thumb. That's about 4 million years ago. So somewhere between 1.5 to 2.5 million years ago, not only do we know how to break a branch off the tree to use it as a weapon, we start to know how to use simple weapons like a stone to break coconuts, something like that. And then about a little less than 2 million years ago, we started to walk upright, called the Homo erectus. And we start to learn how to use fire, how to control fire. So we know how to cook meat. We know how to consume animal fat. And it's a true fact that when you consume animal fat, there's more available to grow your brain. That is not to say that vegetarians don't grow their brain, but clearly when you can digest the food that you eat, whether it's meat or vegetable, and you actually learn how to cook them, they become more digestible. And that's when our brain developed. That started with Homo erectus. And then only about 300,000 years ago, we are called Homo sapiens. That's really when we started to develop our advanced culture. What the baby boomers are trying to do with the industrialization is that we're trying to outsmart our evolution, which took millions of years. So in the last 60 years, maybe a little bit more than 60 since World War II, we completely changed our lifestyle. We don't live according to the sun anymore because we have electricity. We can stay up all night. And nowadays, we definitely stay up all night. We got the iPhones and iPad and all that. Man, we work from home. We don't live according to the sun. We forgot that how important the sun is to our evolution. So if you go back to the last 4 million years, before World War II, before the end of World War II, we used to live in two states. We either live inside a cave or we live outside of the cave. When we're inside the cave, that's when we feel safe. And when we live outside the cave, that's when we feel danger. When we're inside the cave, we're away from the sun. When we're outside the cave, we're under the sun. So the body developed these two systems in the Chinese called the yin and the yang. And when you're outside the cave, you're under danger. Your body enters into fight or flight. And when you're inside the cave, you relax. Your body enters into the rest and digest. So all the exercise that we do here when we talk about yin and yang is exactly that. That when we work on the yang side, we're energizing our sympathetic nerve. And when we work on the yin side, away from the sun, shadow of the sun, we're working on the parasympathetic side. Sympathetic is fight or flight. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. That's our evolution. That is our evolution. So what happens when you're in fight or flight? What happens when you are in the sympathetic side? Your adrenal gland releases stress hormone. It's a signal that tells you that you are either chasing an animal or you're being chased by the animal. Your body reacts accordingly to prepare for fight or flight. Your breath changes. You're breathing faster. Your heartbeat changes. You're beating faster. Your muscle tense up. Your legs started to use this muscle, started locking. Your stomach start to turn. And your pupils start to dilate. And your body becomes flush with blood. The other signal that it does is that it turns off your salivary gland. Because the saliva is an enzyme. Enzyme activates digestion, immunity, and reproduction. You don't need that. When you're being chased by a lion, who cares? So when you're in the fight or flight, you're in one state. You put out all these stress hormones, one of which is called cortisol, which is a steroid. It's there to remove any inflammation in your body as you run. But what happens if you stay in that state for a long time? You develop high blood pressure. You become obese because the system keeps pumping glucose into your bloodstream. You have an impaired immune system. You develop either anxiety or depression, and you cannot sleep. Always sleep, right? Because you're being chased by a lion. But if you were living according to the sun, and you're not trying to outsmart your evolution, you have a chance to return to the rest and digest when you get home, if you get home, right? But when you do get home, you see your wife and your kids, and that's the time to rest and digest and reproduction. So that's when everything reverses itself. Your metabolics returns to its normal. You're not putting out too much hormone. You're not putting too much glucose. Your digestions come back. You start to urinate. You don't have constipation anymore. And basically your body returns to a stable state. So the whole key to our health is to maintain that balance. That's it. Don't try to outsmart it. Don't try to think that you can outsmart it by staying one or the other. It's all about maintaining that balance. Because if you didn't have that balance, what happens is that your body puts out so much cortisol, thinking that you need it to reduce inflammation, that your body develops what's called cortisol resistance. It is as if someone rang your bell. It rings it once, it rings it twice, it rings it 3 times, and you say, forget it. I'm not listening to that. It's just like my German Shepherd. Imagine that you're just constantly banging at the door. Eventually you give up. It says, that's nothing. That's what happens to the body when you have so much cortisol in your body. that is just give up. And when you give up, then you're losing that one ability that you have to self-heal. And your body started to inflame. You started to have carpal tunnel, frozen shoulder. You go to the doctor, they give you more cortisol because you're not sensitive to the one you already have. So chronic stress leads to chronic inflammation because you lose that ability to self-heal. So all the exercise here, whether it's this week or next week, is really just to maintain that balance between the yin and the yang, so that you know how to enter into the energetic state, let your body heal itself. In Chinese, we call clearing the qi channel. And at the same time, you know how to come back to the restorative, let the body restore its sensitivity to the hormone, maintaining the self-healing capability of your body. The Chinese call it restoration. That's it. That's the whole, that's it. That there's nothing more. And so, for example, after we do all the exercise, we come back, we sit, and it's a simple exercise. It's just energizing yin and yang, yin and yang. So when you breathe in, you open your stomach, you pull down your diaphragm. The diaphragm is a very important membrane. It takes the body into the fight or flight, releasing stress hormone. And then when you breathe out, you relax the stomach, you push up the diaphragm, it takes the body into the rest and digest. So just by doing that, already is very healthy for you. That's why all practices, whether it is yogi, tai chi, qigong, or whatever that you do, always come back to abdominal breathing. Always come back, because it just cycles you back and forth, cycles you back and forth. We restore the elasticity, maintaining that balance. On one hand, heal. On the other hand, restore the healing power. And then we take it further by the next one, which is we stretch our spine. Right? Stretching the spine is very important. The spine is the factory for the bone marrow. And so you want to take that energy through the spine all the way to the top of the head, as if you're delivering these essential elements into your brain, maintaining the brain health, working on the membrane between the left brain and the right brain. And then when you come back, that's the restoration. So the scientists start to understand that. They started to measure that, and they use that one metric called the heart rate variability, HRV. You can look it up. You can look it up. They find out that when you breathe in, your heart rate increases, and when you breathe out, your heart rate decreases. The difference is in milliseconds, but they can measure it. And they correlate that with the deposit on your brain for those who suffer from dementia. And it turns out that abdominal breathing reverses that. So they're very excited. Okay? So in summary, mindfulness, meaning that anchoring your mind internally, not external, internally on your body or your breath, has tremendous benefit, not only in your spiritual health, because you're not following the negative energy anymore, but it has tremendous physical benefit in the physical health as well, because it allows you to maintain that balance. Okay?